I remember being in university and working student security. I would often work every night on the weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. But Sunday was special because, well, A, it was super quiet, so you could kind of goof off and not have to do a lot of work. But also when we would be driving around the security van, shuttling people to parking lots around campus, I could listen to the ongoing history of new music from Alan Cross, which was still very new. I'd only been on the air, a matter of months at that time. Alan Cross was doing something that nobody else was doing. In fact, nobody else has really done anything like it since. And he had this hugely challenging task of trying to be a historian for something that was actually brand new. And I guess, maybe in a way, that's what historians do. They document these things and then that becomes history. But his task was a little complicated in that, how do you build the history for something that hasn't actually happened yet? But that was then, and this is now, and now 1,000 episodes in and 3 decades later, the ongoing history of new music still is on the air. It's available on radio and it's available as a podcast. Alan very generously agreed to allow me to interview him. Let's take a listen to my conversation with Alan Cross. Alan, thank you for being here.
Well, you're most welcome. I figure if you have the ability and willingness to reach out, the least I can do is say yes.
Can we talk about the ongoing history of new music? I mean, I'm sure you're sick of talking about it at some point, but can we talk about how it all began? It's been a long time. It
really has. Let's just put it this way. This is not what I expected to be doing with my life. I have no idea what it would be, but it certainly wasn't this. Because the way it went was I joined CFNY in 1986, and I was basically a guy who was on the radio talking about records. The station was undergoing some financial turmoil. It had been sold a couple of times. And there were all these rumors and speculation that the station was going to flip from being an alternative station to being a country station. And we were all quite worried about that because none of us liked country. But new management came in I guess it was sometime in 1992. And after looking around, they realized that switching to country would be a pretty dumb thing, considering that this was a radio station known for playing alternative music. And bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and the Chili Peppers and Ministry and Nine Inch Nails and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains were now the biggest thing in the world. So, okay, we're not going to flip the country. However, what we are going to do is transform the radio station so it's no longer one of these too cool for the room stations. And that was a problem. I mean, we were pretty, snobby when it came to our music because we were these underdogs and we felt that we were on a mission from God to deliver the greatest music in the world to, people who were willing to listen. That wasn't going to fly anymore. So the station adopted a nickname, The Edge. And it was decided that it needed a program to explain all this music to all these new listeners that the station hoped to get. They looked around and they found exactly one person on staff with a history degree, which was me. And they said, okay, this is going to be your new job. Now, at the time, I was working Monday to Friday from 2 until 6. Greatest gig in the world. You roll in at about 11 o'clock, you do your show prep, have some lunch, go on the air, leave at 6 o'clock, and get home in time for the rerun of Seinfeld at 7 o'clock. It was fantastic.
It was perfect. That's perfect.
It really was. But they said, no, you've got this new job. First of all, you are going to do this radio show called The Ongoing History of New Music. The first thing I said was, that's a stupid name. And the second thing is, we are going to sever you as a full-time employee, hire you back as an independent contractor to do this program, and we will also hire you as a part-time employee to work 6 a.m. to noon Saturday and Sunday. Now, this is not what I had in mind at all. I said, thank you for the opportunity, but no. And they shoved a yellow envelope across the desk and said, well, we wish you well in your future endeavors, unless you would like to reevaluate the situation. So, I had just gotten married. I had just got my first house. I was a guy on the radio talking about records, which really doesn't lend itself to a lot of portable skills to other careers. So I had no choice but to take the gig. And for the first 9 months, it was awful. I mean, I did the Saturday and Sunday morning. I did the worked on this program. I didn't have a common day off with my wife. It was pretty miserable. And of course, this is late 1992, early 1993, where we did not have the internet. And at that time, the whole idea of alternative music was brand new. So there weren't any books on the subject. There were very few magazines on the subject. All we really had was some press releases and news clippings that people had haphazardly gathered over the last number of years. So that's all I really had to go on to create this program. There was no template. I had no idea what to do. So I just started. I mean, a journey to 1,000 episodes begins with a single step, and that's exactly what happened. And to my surprise, it all worked out. And the reason I say it was surprising is because back in 1993, FM radio regulations were published in a book that was, about the size of a phone book. And we had to have a number of programming styles and initiatives that kept us separate and distinct from AM radio. And one of the things that all FM radio stations had to do back then was something called foreground program. This was long-form thematic programming. And you had to do so many hours per week. And Ongoing History was designed to be one of those CRTC mandated foreground programs. Now, a weird thing happened is that when those regulations disappeared 3 or 4 years later, the company decided to keep the program even though they didn't need to do it. And it just kind of grew from there.
So that regulation doesn't exist today. So
it does not. It has not existed for approaching 30 years.
That's crazy. That's absurd.
Yeah, it's boy, you have no idea.
And so it's now 1,000 episodes, 30 years of Ongoing History of New Music.
Yeah.
And you were not sure this is actually what you wanted to do.
Well, I know. I mean, I've been doing it for so long, I don't know what else to do. But yeah, this was not supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to turn out this way. There have been, so many things have happened as a result. I've written 5 books. I've been involved in films and documentaries and speaking engagements and museum exhibits and artist bios and a billion other things, none of which would have happened without this program. And to be very honest, I probably wouldn't be in the business. This is the thing that saved me from, being irrelevant in the world of radio. Come November, I will have been doing this for a living for 43 years.
Wow.
There aren't a lot of people still doing radio after this length of time, especially with all the technological and financial and advertising upheavals that we've seen in the last 15 years. So, I'm grateful. It does look like I will make it to 65 or 66 doing this program that I initially did not want to do.
That's absolutely brilliant.
Well, it just shows you that life is a series of zigs and zags, and you have no idea where things are going to end up. And you just have to either, roll with the changes, make lemonade out of lemons, and then recognize when dumb luck comes your way and do your best to capitalize on it.
Would you change anything? Like, I know that I love this story so much because, I think in my world, I talked to a lot of people about the automotive industry. We'll touch on that in a bit. And how my joke is that no one plans to go into automotive, that you just kind of end up stumbling into it. And I was talking to someone who works more on the parts and service side of the business recently, and his opinion was the opposite. He intended to get into automotive and somehow ended up in marketing, and that no one ends up in marketing, which, kind of, if you follow that thread a little further, it's like maybe no one ends up in anything.
It's very possible. I mean, my I've got friends who, I'm going to be a teacher. And that's what they did. I wanted to be in radio, which is what I did, but it is not how I expected to be doing radio. In fact, there really isn't, any analog to me almost anywhere in the world, at least somebody who's still not doing it. I mean, if you go to the BBC, I'm sure you'll find somebody, but you won't find anybody in American radio. You won't find anybody in traditional Canadian radio. So, yay?
Yay. It turned out. It all worked out.
It did.
I do wonder, though, like, I can't even imagine. It would have been great if just for April Fools at some point in the early 90s, you had actually flipped to country just to see what that would have been like just to straight day of line dancing.
Oh God, no. Listen, I will appreciate that whatever music you like, please enjoy the music. But there's one music that I cannot get, and that's country. And I have tried. I have worked with country music artists. I've worked with country music broadcasters. I have spent an awful lot of time in Nashville, and it just doesn't speak to me. I just
doesn't jive.
Can't.
So talk me through now, so you started out with no blueprint. Like you started out like with a blank sheet, a blank canvas, no idea how to begin, but you're still doing it. So what does it take? What's the process you go through? Recently somebody asked me the question and I didn't have a good answer. They're like, what's your stack? So what's your stack? Like, how do you go about putting together another episode of the Ongoing History of New Music?
Well, by this time, it's more of a lifestyle than anything else. I'm always looking for things to talk about. The need and the audience and the venues for the program have changed over the years. I mean, it was one thing when it was just an edge-only program where I could talk about nothing but alternative music. Can't do that now because the station is on stations that are not pure alternative, like Q107 in Toronto. And the shows also have to be able to be ported into podcasts, which means because you can't play full songs, that places a certain amount of restrictions on what you can do. The way I try to describe things is that try to imagine you're a high school student and it's Sunday night and Family Guy is over and you have an assignment due the next morning and you haven't started on. That's how I feel every single week. Now, I do work 6 or 7 weeks in advance, but I still have to put out 33 or 34 brand new ongoing histories every year. And now I have to put out 26 of these new programs called Uncharted every year as well. So I'm always thinking about what to put on my stack. And my stack tends to be fairly thick, fortunately, because if it ever gets thin or disappears, well, then what am I going to do? Radio doesn't wait for anybody. I got deadlines. I gotta fill those deadlines. So I'm always looking for something. I'm always writing things down. I've got all my Post-it notes. I got my files on my phone. I got my files on my iPad. I've got files on my computer. And when I run across something that I think might be a building block for a new topic, I'll put it aside. And hopefully, over time, there will be enough building blocks that I can create a new show. Sometimes I get suggestions from listeners, which is great. And other times I will just be lying in bed and something will hit me like, bam, oh, hey, I could write something about that. Now, I am on episode number 1018 now. There has been very little repetition among those 1018 songs. I mean, I do revisit the same topic multiple times, but I've never taken a show and rewritten it and pretended to be a new one. So it's, having done this for 32 years, 31 years and 1,000 shows. It's getting a little trickier.
It's getting trickier.
Yep. But I take that as a challenge.
Right. I think you've been covering a little bit both in the show and on the blog, on the website, A Journal of Musical Things.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. The recent shift where vinyl is outselling CDs, which I think is fascinating. Like, that's just that's wild. I mean, obviously the numbers are not what they were when either format was in their peak, but it kind of blows my mind that we now live in a world where vinyl outsells other formats again.
Yeah, there's something that just came out today in the UK that vinyl has been propelled to the highest sales level since 1994. So wait a second. The big bands in the world right now are the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Weezer and Green Day, and vinyl is outselling CDs. What year is this? It's very strange. It's very odd, but there is no center to the music industry anymore. There's no center to music anymore because of streaming, because of technology. Everybody is their own music director. There is very little consensus, with the exception of artists like, let's say, Beyonce or Green Day. There's no massive superstar acts in the same way that there used to be back in the day. Everybody's free to do their own thing, and because everything is so fractalized, we have no clue where things are or where things are going. So you have to kind of have to just bob and weave on a weekly or even daily basis to figure out what's next. And with radio, for example, there's, radio used to be the big dog because it was, before Much Music and MTV, the only place to get new music. Now it's just another way to get new music. It's mostly a thing that people listen to in the car. It is fighting against streaming. It's fighting against satellite radio. It's still very powerful, profitable, and popular, but it's things have changed, and you have to adapt with those changes.
Right. I wonder. So I listen to a lot of music, but I'm not unlike you in that I also struggle to get into country, and I've tried. I think I've tried.
Mm.
I can't quite find, outside of like Johnny Cash, which I think, he kind of transcends.
I could probably buy into that. Yeah.
Right. But I feel like we're in a weird place with music where genre is collapsing, where there is no longer genre, in a place where if in the same decade, Beyonce can release a country album and Trent Reznor can win a country music award, maybe we're in a weird place where there is no genre anymore.
Well, let's look at it this way. When in the early 1950s, say, let's take 1955, you basically had only a few genres. You had rock and roll, whatever that was then. You had R&B, you had country, you had jazz, and you had classical. And then on this side, you had what was called good music, easy listening music for adults who didn't like any of the popular forms. But since then, all of those genres have stratified, separated, and segmented into 8 billion different things. It was more or less fairly consistent until we get to 1977. And at that point, rock bifurcates into mainstream rock and punk and whatever came with that. Funk or R&B has become funk, has become disco, has become soon hip hop and rap. Country divides between old country or classic country and new country. Jazz, who knows what jazz becomes. Country, it just becomes this. Things begin to segment, into everything rides off in every direction all at once. There's, in fact, if you want to see exactly how fragmented things are, there is a website called everynoise.com, and a former employee of Spotify who was in charge of trying to classify, categorize, and place into genre piles all the music that was coming into Spotify, created this scatter plot diagram that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger that relates all these different genres to each other. And I think the last time I looked, there were 25 or 2,600 genres plotted on that page. And it's fascinating. It's a rabbit hole that you can go down and you'll get lost there for a very long time. But yeah, this goes hand in hand with this idea of everybody being their own thing. not only for being a music consumer, but from being a composer and musician yourself. You're allowed to do whatever you want. Now, we can talk about Beyonce going country. Well, that to me is just naked marketing. You know, how many people can do that? Not many. And Beyonce could do it because she's Beyonce. Same thing with Taylor Swift going, moving from country to pop. I mean, it's because it was Taylor Swift. Trent Reznor got his Grammy for Old Town Road because somebody stole a sample from him. So that's kind of a backdoor way into it. But yeah, I do some teaching from time to time. And one of the things I do is ask the students to bring out their phones and give me the last 10 songs that they played. Back in the old day, they would be, in one genre, in one style. They'd be punk, they'd be metal, they'd be goth, they'd be hair metal, they'd be whatever. Now, what did you play? Well, the first song was some Justin Bieber, then I listened to some Drake, then I listened to some Travis Scott, and then some AC/DC, and then some Beatles and Rolling Stones. And then, I've got Nina Simone on here, and I just listened to Billie Holiday and some Grateful Dead. And it's like, pick a lane, kid. And they say, why? I mean, I have on my phone access to somewhere around 120 million songs from all genres and all eras. I am able to choose whatever I want. Why wouldn't I? And rather than using, back in the day, a lot of people would use music as an identifier. They would use the music to figure out who they were, a specific genre of music to figure out who they were, and then use that genre to project to the world who they were. It was an identifier. People still do that today, but not in the same fashion. Because if you say that, I like Testament and Megadeth, but I also like The Weeknd and Drake, what does that tell you? I'm not sure, because I'm not of that generation and I can't interpret those signs. But, people will always listen to music and they will always use music to figure out who they are. But as for projecting an identity with it, unless you do pick a lane, and I'm a punk kid, I'm a metal kid, I'm a goth kid, I'm a country kid, I'm, whatever. It's just so different.
Right. There's a website, I think you talked about in one of your shows, that allows you to find all of the music on Spotify that no one has listened to?
Yeah, it's called Forgotify.
Forgotify.
Yeah, if you have a Spotify account, you can sign into Forgotify. Somewhere around 20 to 25% of all the songs in Spotify have never been streamed once. Never been streamed once. And like I say, 120 million songs. So if we're looking at 25%, that means 30%, 30 million songs never been heard. So, Spotify did something the other month, where they said that we're not going to pay out any royalties to any song that streams less than 1,000 times. And there was a big hue and cry about that. But, how many songs, how much money you're going to get from streaming 1,000 songs, that's 1,000 times? About $1, maybe $1. It saves Spotify a little, some money, but, some people who are low streamers aren't going to get any payouts at all. Not that it would matter. And frankly, if you're getting 1,000 streams or 1,200 streams or 1,500 streams per song, you're just not very good or very popular. So learn to deal with that, I'm afraid.
Right. And so how does a person find music? How does music discovery happen now? If we're kind of, on one side, very diversified in terms of maybe back catalog, but in terms of actual new music, one of the things I talk about with my son is that, pretty much everything he listens to is only top 100. He's only picking songs off the.
How old is he?
He'll be 16 in 26 days.
Ooh, so. Okay. So that's interesting, because usually, from ages 8 or 9 through to 13 or 14, that's how you listen. That's what you do, because, you listen to top 40 radio and you hear the hits and you like the hits, and because you're so young, it's all brand new, and every song that you hear is the greatest song ever. But then at a certain point, you decide that you want music with a little bit more substance, and you want to go a little bit deeper into some of the sounds that speak to you the most. So that's interesting that he's still stuck in that top 100. It could have to do with the technology he's using, or it could have to do with just his general affinity for music. My parents, for example, I did not grow up in a musical household, not at all. And it was up to my sister and I to figure out, what was out there. Today, for me, it's still the radio. I have my list of non-Canadian radio stations that I listen to. People send me stuff. I get newsletters. I get press releases, get, magazines and other things that tell me what's new. And it is my job to go through as much of this stuff as possible because people tend to look to me for recommendations. So who does the recommender get his recommendations from? Well, that's tricky. It's from all over the place. And again, what I do is not so much a job as it is a lifestyle. I'm doing it all the time.
Right. You live it.
Yeah, you have to do it right.
It's funny. That's like this show and this experience. It shows you somehow.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's not about me. It's about the audience. So you have to bob and weave and make sure that you're while you remain engaged and excited about what you're doing, you can't lose sight of the fact that without an audience, nobody cares.
Right.
So, I've done ongoing histories on bands like Imagine Dragons, which I don't care about at all, but that's my problem. It's something that the audience, might want to know about. Therefore, it's my job to bring them the best possible Imagine Dragons show that I can.
Right. One of the things I've been curious about, because you've commented about this on your show, is speaking of bobbing and weaving, your relationship with Courtney Love. And how did that, what is the current state of your relationship with Courtney?
I haven't spoken to her for a while because she's been living in England, and so I don't know, but she does have an album coming out, and she does have a book coming out later this year, so I expect to reconnect at some point.
Nice. That's great. Changing gears, using an automotive trope for a moment. I think this is true. People don't know this about you. You're a bit of a car guy. Is it fair to say you're a car guy, or are you really just
100% a car guy? Oh no, my God, absolutely. If I wasn't in this business, I might want to be something to do with the automotive industry, and it would be, I wouldn't be a salesman, but I would love to be involved. Let's put it this way: I've seen every episode of Top Gear about 14 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm that kind of person. And I was for a while, just after the pandemic, I was a brand ambassador for Porsche Canada. So yeah, I do like cars. It's a high performance production, sports cars, supercars, hypercars. That's me.
Nice. And so what's in your garage? What's your daily driver? And what's your dream car?
Right now, it's a Porsche 718. Oh, and a dream car? What am I using the car for?
You tell me. Maybe just track. Maybe. Yeah.
If unlimited funds?
Unlimited funds.
A Rimac 2.0 or something from Koenigsegg.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Have you been following at all anything that's going on with it's top of my mind because I've been doing a lot of reading about the Beijing Auto Show, but all of the goings on in China and the kind of explosion of the automotive industry there?
Yeah, I was in Southeast Asia last month, and lots of electric vehicles, a lot of BYDs. I learned that BYD stands for Build Your Dream.
Build Your Dream.
No idea. Yeah. And there were some other Chinese-made cars that I can't remember. I saw the logos, but I don't know what they were. I just came back from Germany on Sunday, and there was a car that was being advertised in the Berlin airport called the Cupra. And I'd never seen it before. Cupra seems to be, and I haven't had a chance to look it up, but it seems to be some sort of electric hypercar. So, okay. Yeah, so I have been watching. I do another podcast that deals with a lot of technology, and we spend an awful lot of time talking about EVs, whether they be hybrids, plug-in hybrids, or more pure electric. And we're all watching to see what happens with solid-state batteries. And when that happens, I talked to somebody the other day, and then they've come up with some new cathode technology that somehow it makes lithium batteries charge faster and have greater range. And then there was somebody else who came up with some kind of algorithm that takes standard lithium batteries that we have today and gets them to, without changing the chemical composition or the mechanical makeup of the battery, adds by 90%, to charging speed and capacity by 90%. So, I mean, whoever comes up with the battery is going to be a trillionaire.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be Elon Musk because he's too busy messing around with what used to be Twitter.
The website formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah. And what else did I see recently? Oh, well, my car is up for lease at the end of the lease in June. And Porsche has stopped making both the Cayman and the Boxster in Europe because of emission regulations, even though each car had a very efficient, low CO2 4-cylinder turbo engine. And they're going to get the jump on the next iteration in 2025, which will be all electric. So Porsche with the Taycan will also have the 718 and the Boxster as all electric vehicles. And I'm not sure I want to make that jump just yet.
I think it's going to be a very different driving experience, but I think the acceleration will be impressive.
It'll be stupid, and on my bucket list is a Nürburgring, and we'll see. We'll see.
See, it would be interesting for you to pivot in a way or extend beyond what you currently do to automotive. There are people I've seen and folk I've chatted with who are in the space of reviewing cars, and I'm like, how do you get that job? How do you get that job to just be flown to wherever the car is and then talk about it, write about it, drive it around?
I've done a little bit of that, but what was it? It was a Mazda. I think it was a Mazda 6 coupe. I did a thing on. I wrote some articles for the Toronto Star when they tried to resurrect a full wheel section. So yeah, but unfortunately, no manufacturer has said, "Hey, let's go to Spain. Here's the new Bugatti. Why don't you take it around for a couple of hours?" That has not happened yet.
But now you've put it out into the world, so it could happen. Now that
it could happen. Yeah. If it does happen, my wife understands that no matter what the circumstances, I'm going.
I'm going to begin lobbying for you, Alan. I'm gonna see if I can help you out here.
I was doing some speaking engagements but this was pre-pandemic, and I ran into somebody who had worked as somebody with McLaren Canada. And she said, well, wouldn't it be cool if you went to some of these speaking engagements and you pulled up in a 720S? I go, yes, I would love that. But nothing ever came of it. And I did, as a matter of fact, I did do some work for Lamborghini Canada. I judged a livery for I guess it was a pace car. And I was judged, and they said, well, we don't have any money to pay for it, but here's a Huracan for a day. Okay.
Here's a Huracan for a day.
So can you imagine, and I didn't tell my wife this, so can you imagine an electric blue Huracan pulling up in the driveway, and my wife is on the front porch, and I get out of this thing, and can you just imagine her reaction? It's everything you thought it would be.
And did you take her for a spin? Was there?
I did. I only had it for the day, so I had to take it back to the dealer in Vaughan, and she was a little freaked out because she'd never been that low to a roadway.
Yeah, that's got to be unnerving. I mean, I haven't ever driven one. There used to be many, many, many years ago a Lamborghini dealership right at Front and Bathurst, right? And so I had friends who lived in that area, and I used to walk by it all the time, and I did go in, of course, very quickly they could suss out I was not their customer. I was not a buying customer when I walked in, in my cargo shorts and Tevas at the time. But it was all those cars so low to the ground. It blows my mind. I can't even imagine trying to drive one on the streets in Toronto?
It was fine.
Was it fine?
Oh, yeah. Their Grand Touring Automobiles is opening up a brand new dealership here in Oakville, and I will be visiting. Oh, yes, I will be visiting.
If they have some sort of frequent flyer or like coffee card, you'll have the card. You'll be there. Card.
Yeah, it's, I would love to be able to go in there. Don't you know who I am? Give me a car.
There's got to be a way to cross-pollinate. I mean, there's enough people in music. See, your angle has got to be musicians and their cars, and then you need to get the musician to take you for a ride or let you drive.
I'll give you, well, at one point, this is again pre-pandemic with somebody who was no longer in the business. We had come up with an idea of it was sort of based on the Star and the Reasonably Priced Car from Top Gear, where we would get a celebrity, put him in a car, take him around a track. But in this case, we would have an automobile manufacturer or series of them, or better yet, a marketing company with a number of marks under their umbrella. And we would get a musician, take them out to Mosport or Shannonville or something, give them some training, and then, drive around the track, talk about their career, and then let them go and see what their times are. That almost came to fruition, but it collapsed.
Was it insurance related?
I think it was a money thing. I don't think we could. I don't know. In Canada, when you present a new opportunity to someone, this is my personal experience, Canadian will go, who else is doing this? If you were in America, the same proposition would get this response. Great, can I be first? And it just, I don't know, there's little appetite for risk, I guess.
Right. Now that we know that you love cars, and now that you have been doing ongoing history and many other things, books, events, managing radio stations, programming at radio stations, what would you do differently? If you could go back to 1992, Alan, and you could say, this is your future, what would you do differently? How would you think about that differently?
I'd started contributing to my RSV sooner. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm pretty pleased with the way things have worked out. I mean, I would have done things when I would have been a better manager, knowing what I know now. I would have been a little bit bolder with some decisions, and maybe that would have taken me somewhere. But on the whole, considering all the bad things that could have happened and all the missteps that I could have taken, I'm okay. I really am okay. I realize that I'm extraordinarily stupidly lucky, and I don't want to jinx that.
Don't want to jinx that.
Yeah.
Your Berlin trip sounded amazing. Talk a bit about the landmarks, the tour. You went on a bit of was it a walking tour of music?
Well, no, I ran into somebody from Berlin, took me around to a bunch of places. I had been to Berlin before in 2015, so I'd seen a lot of the World War II historical stuff, and I'd seen some of the music stuff as well. But Berlin is a really interesting city. There's a lot of energy. There's even after the Cold War is over, there's a certain amount of tension there. A lot of bohemian artists, a lot of free thinkers. And there's a history of that sort of thing. So my hotel was like a 2-minute walk from the apartment where David Bowie and Iggy Pop lived in the 1970s on Potsdamer Straße. Hansa Studios, where Bowie recorded a couple of records. The Cure recorded there. Achtung Baby from U2 began there. There's all these small clubs with, punk bands or whatever bands playing on these galleries. I recommend it to anybody. There are, Bowie walks, for example. There's a Bowie walk for Berlin, and you can take a tour of where he used to hang out with Iggy and where he recorded and so on. I love that sort of stuff. If you ever go to London, there's a company called London Walks, and London Walks will take you on all kinds of tours to all the musical landmarks. So, if you're traveling and that's your thing, there's a punk rock walk in New York City. Takes you to Ramones and CBGBs and all that sort of thing. I do all those things.
Nice. I did see, although we didn't actually go into it, there's like a punk museum downtown Reykjavik.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
I would like to go to that. There, by the way, in Berlin, there is a Ramones museum.
Why is there a Ramones museum in Berlin?
Oh, no. I bought some beer glasses. There's also the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, which is pretty cool. It just opened last year. Been there.
Really? Where is that?
It is in an industrial area northeast of the Strip.
Awesome. I was just in Vegas a couple months ago. I did not know that. I would have gone. I would have done that.
It's definitely worth it.
All right. And beyond, so, in closing, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but on the idea of, what do I tell my son? How do I get my son into other music? Do I just make him listen to your show more? Is that what I do?
I know a way of doing it. The other thing is that people come to music when they get exposed to something unintentionally, repeatedly. So in the car, in the house, play stuff that you like over and over and over again, and eventually the penny will drop.
See, I tried that when he was younger, and it kind of stuck for a while. And somehow, I think it might have been, post-COVID, having been at home during COVID for so long, it's almost like all of that was reversed. He was the biggest, this wasn't necessarily forced on him, but when he was 7, 8, 9 years old, he was the biggest White Stripes, Black Keys fan, and somehow has lost all of that. But I think you'll be okay.
It will come to him if it's meant to. One of the things too is that you try slowly, gently, take him by the hand and say, here's, pick a song from the 70s or the 90s, whatever era meant most to you. You got to understand, when Dad was growing up, this is what we were listening to, and here's why, here's where, and just leave it at that. Don't force it. Just see what comes.
I also, now that you say that, I think the other avenue might be, connecting some other dots from this conversation, actually buying him vinyl. He doesn't have a record player, but somehow he and his friends have really warmed up to the idea of buying vinyl, and they go over to their one friend's house whose parents have like a very classic basement living room with a, old school stereo set up and a record player, and they all go to the one friend's house to play their records, which is kind of
maybe you can get for about $700, you can get something pretty decent for your place. I'd recommend it, and Dad could use it too.
Yeah. See, now you're giving me bad ideas. See, now I've been resisting I had an addiction problem when it came to CDs, and I thought I can't get into vinyl, otherwise I'm going to lose. There won't be any money for the RSPs because it will launch into the.
It's a little easier with vinyl because it's expensive. And what you do is you go to a used record store and you buy a foundation, with records for $3, $4, $5, and then you lose your mind after that.
And then you spend a lot of time on websites, through band websites, getting your individual, double thick pressed vinyl album shipped to your home. What else is on deck for you? So you have the 2 podcasts. What else do you have going on? What else is coming out?
A documentary in the old school days of CFNY. I'm working on a Hollywood film called Kent State, and there was another couple of TV programs that are sort of in stasis right now, but there's a lot going on. There really is a lot going on.
You sound like a very busy man.
It's fun. I mean, if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, would you like to work on a movie starring William H. Macy and Alec Baldwin?" Okay.
Hard to say no to that.
Hard to say no. So that should be hearing more about that in 2025.
Amazing. And if somebody were to show up with a Lamborghini in your driveway, then as well, that would be
just not orange.
Just not orange. They are sometimes the weirdest colors, right?
Yeah, but orange is not my season, so no.
Electric blue, yellow, red.
I don't know if I've ever seen a red Lambo.
I don't know if they exist either. I'm not sure if they exist.
But yeah, yellow be fine, green, blue, black, any of those.
I'll see what I can do.
No matte black, though. I think they look unfinished.
No matte black, just the full gloss black.
Yes.
Alan, thank you so much for this. I know I just emailed you out of the blue and you said yes, so I greatly appreciate your time and your consideration here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for thinking of me, and I have to go because I have my boxing lesson.
Well, don't want to miss that. Okay.
We'll see you later.
I mean, how great was that? And he's got a point. If somebody calls you up and asks if you want to work with William H. Macy and Alec Baldwin, you say yes, right? You say yes. Thanks, Alan. Thanks again. I know I already said that, but it was really generous of him to give me so much of his time. I think it's funny that, not funny, haha. It's just curious how people's careers go, and that, maybe Alan wants to review cars for a living. Maybe that's something else. Maybe some of you auto folk could help him out with that. It sounds like you would be totally into it if you could present him with the right opportunity. I, as always, want to thank Dark Tapes for providing the music for this podcast. If you want to, get to know me a little bit better and see some of the other work that I do and some of the things that I think about on a week-to-week basis, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. It's available at growdy.wtf, crowdy.wtf. Sign up there. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to, as they say, like and subscribe, or whatever button that particular podcast system has. Like, subscribe, hit the button. Just hit the button.